Now, you kids are probably saying to yourselves, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get the world by the tail and wrap it around and pull it down and put it in my pocket. Well, I'm here to tell you that you're probably going to find out as you go out there that you're not going to amount to jack squat. You're gonna end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river. Now, young man, what do you want to do with your life?
Actually, Matt, I kind of want to be a writer.
Well, Lottie frickin' da!
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Muskies on Tap, episode 71, coming to you live. The two gentlemen. Let me restart. 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on. Why are you guys dying?
All right, you got it, dog. You got it.
All right, 73?
Yeah, 73.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. I am not your host. This is Brian Eckel here. I'm going to introduce the fellas tonight. We are live here with episode 73, and across from me right now are the two fellas, Gus Matty and Max, live from the boys' cabin in Eagle River, gearing up for the PMTT. But before we get into any of that talk, there's a lot to be talked about there, maybe more so after the tournament. But in the meantime, we have an incredible interview coming up with Price County's finest, Luke Bogdanovic. We will get into that here shortly. But gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? Gus, what are you drinking?
Thank you, Brian, for that lovely intro there. That was a first, but I think you did all right.
Great.
You did awesome.
Passing of the torch.
Third time's the charm. I'm sipping on a good old Coors Banquet. Just the old Rocky Mountains, Golden, Colorado flowing through my veins right now. It's tasting mighty fine on this lovely Tuesday evening in late September, and it does not feel like it. The nights are cold, but the days are warm, and the water temperatures are still warm as well. But doing pretty good, and sitting right next to me here as well is none other than my brother, great friend, tournament partner, great angler, great net man, Max Matty.
Great net, man. Just kidding. Yeah, I'm doing great tonight, fellas. Brian, you really knocked that intro out of the park. Way to take the reins on that one and just crush it. Yeah, it's good to be up north. I will say man, having some back issues. So not the best week. Yeah, I think I have what's called sciatica. New to me. So kind of just dealing with that right now. Just monitoring the situation. Pretty much everything is laboring from getting out of a chair to sitting down in said chair. So we'll we're like I said, we're monitoring the situation, hoping that heals itself come Friday. Not really sure what happened there. I had some issues. I got up here on Monday night and I went out and Gus and I got to hop in the boat with Taylor Flannery from Musky Guaranteed Guide Service. We all went and fished a lake that we had some previous experience on, but not much. It was new to Taylor. Definitely some kind of more so trophy-ish water, quote unquote. And we'd not really had any luck on it prior, and went out there and Gus sealed the deal on a really nice fish. So I had a really great time with Taylor, just a solid dude, had a lot of fun. But yeah, towards the end of the evening, my back was kind of hurting me, and I got back to the cabin, Brian. It was like the same scene that you were in during Labor Day weekend on draft weekend. It was just like trying to put on a pair of socks was like the hardest thing in the world. I couldn't even believe what was going down. So I got really freaked out. I mean, I was like, of all weeks for this to happen, of course it's during the championship weekend, but we've been recovering. Today, Gus and I got out and did a little bit of pre-fishing.
Are you not
things started to loosen up.
are you not
Yeah.
worried when you're fishing after like a total back lockup that a hook set's just gonna be the death of you?
It was really bad last night. Kind of loosened up today to the point where I was able to cast, but I was just throwing like small bucktails, top water. We'll get into that a little bit. Flaptail is back, which is great. Didn't actually hook a fish, but saw some.
They swiping, no swiping. They're
Flaptail
They were
is kinda
swiping,
back.
no swiping. But yeah, it was really cool. We did some pre-fishing on the chain. For us, it's a lot to kind of unpack here. I don't know how much we want to do pre-interview or post-interview, but pre-fishing on home waters is just a whole different ordeal because it's like you look at a map, and I mean, we've been out here fishing for almost 20 years now, feels like, and which is funny to say, but it's like every point, every shoreline has a picture that we have with a muskie on it at some point in time over the last, decade at least. So it's just funny. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So it's a little bit more interesting to kind of pre-fish instead of going to some new water and breaking it down. So we're kind of parceling through that right now, but it was a good day out there. And then Gus and I actually hopped onto a smaller, different lake outside off the chain with our dad, and we went out there to do a little bit of fishing right before sunset during a major that kind of aligned on this half moon. We figured it would be pretty good, seeing as that's when Gus got the bite yesterday. One tried to chase a big fish. Gus had moved a couple days prior, and started throwing flaptail like bright blue sun around 5 o'clock, 5:30, and sure enough, fish were coming up on the flaptail. So no eats, but one tried, one other one got real close to trying, and
How do you
and then
try?
actually,
How does a fish try the flaptail?
well, I was throwing the MK65, so big bait kind of moving through the water. And just seeing how they kind of spaz on it was so cool. Like they were, going to the side of it, going behind it. One kind of like rolled on it and then reset up and followed on it. The other one tried to nip at the back and then kind of came around the first turn and went up and like nipped the middle of the bait. Didn't ever got hooks. And then I went to a walk the dog bait and had one come up and just like open mouth, skied and tried to eat it and just completely whiffed on it.
My God.
So that was pretty fun. So we didn't land any night, but it was kind of a fun little hour and a half, pre-pod fishing. But yeah, vibes are high this week outside of the back injury that we're dealing with. We're feeling good. It's gonna be a really fun week. Good to have everybody up here, seeing some folks. So it's been a good time.
Well, that's good. I'm looking forward to a little Jordan flu game out of you during the championship here. See what you're made of.
Yeah, it's gonna be hopefully. Oh God, I got a bad case of the hiccups. These Coors Banquets are getting the best of me. Yeah, I'm hoping that it won't be a battle by Friday.
Get the mic out of his face.
It's gonna be a battle just to get through this intro. All right, let's dial up this interview here with Luke that we just had, and we'll catch you guys in the outro. All right, here on the line, we got Luke Bogdanovic out of the Price County area of northern Wisconsin, otherwise known as LBfishing Guide Service on the Instagrams and the Facebooks. So, Luke, how you doing tonight?
I'm not doing too bad. I hope you guys are doing the same.
Yeah, pretty good. Max and myself just got off the water. He's here with me right now. We're both in Eagle River right now, and we had a little bit of activity out there. Did you get anything going tonight?
I had to do a little bit of work on my boat trailer this afternoon for a couple hours, and then I only had about an hour left of daylight, and I decided to take mom and dad out with me to one of my favorite lakes over by where they live. And mom actually got her first muskie of the season, so that was pretty darn cool to watch on a Magnum shallow swimming dog outside of a weedy bay. So as soon as we got that thing in the net, all chaos broke loose. Everyone screaming and just it was really nice. Really good to get her on her first fish of the year. That's for sure.
Awesome.
Nice. How often do your parents get out with you like that? That's really cool.
Probably get out of here, cat. She's playing with the laptop. Probably they've been out with me 3, 4 times already this season, and they go out quite a bit on their own and whatnot from time to time, but they got plenty of other stuff going on and they're big bow hunters this time of year, so that kind of shifts the priority once fall comes. But they get out plenty and they got a big history with musky fishing too, so it's in their nature, that's for sure.
So are they who got you into musky fishing, or where did this story of yours start back in the day?
Pretty much, yeah. Ever since I was little, I mean, I've hopped in the boat with them when they've done Monday night leagues and stuff like that. And I mean, I think my first muskie was when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I was using a little Spider-Man Zepco rod that was about 3 feet long with a bass spinnerbait. And I was kind of doing a figure eight thing from what my dad tells me. I don't remember this, but they obviously do. And I was just going back and forth on the side of the boat for probably 10 minutes. And then this 31.5 incher just comes up and crushes it. And ever since then, it's been a fish that I've always really, really enjoyed catching. But I really didn't like specifically get hard into fishing them until probably my junior year of college, in all honesty, because when COVID hit, I ended up being back here at home doing all online classes, and I didn't have a boat or anything then, so I'd hit up a bunch of dams on the rivers around me from shore. And there was one week where I went probably every single day. I went up to this one dam. I'd either catch a fish, lose a fish, or see a fish. And ever since then, it's just been like, okay, this is something I really, really gotta go hard and crazy on. So
Yeah, that's awesome. So I've been following you for a bit on the social media stuff, and seems like you do quite a bit of variety on like how you like to fish for these things.
yeah,
So I
big
kind of
time.
just want to dive right into there. I mean, you kind of talked about how you got into the sport, fishing rivers and stuff. Obviously, you got a boat now.
hmm
What kind of rig are you running, and what kind of trips are you running with clients and whatnot?
So my current lake boat is actually it's a 1986 Ranger Fisherman 680T tiller, and I got a pretty good steal on it. The guy who I bought it from, my
Good
dad
luck.
knows, they work together, and he had it for 5, 6 years, and I think he only took it on the water 2, 3 times. So it's in mint condition. There's hardly any scratches or marks or anything on it. And there was an old outboard on the back of it, an old Evinrude 60 horse, and that thing started giving me some issues after the first season of it. And so I was just thinking, okay, well, I either gotta start saving up for a new motor to put on the back or something like that, because I don't want to have to be out on the water with clients and then have something break on it or whatnot, and then that just wouldn't be a good situation at all. So I just put a brand new Yamaha 60 horse on the back, just a 4-stroke, and I'm absolutely loving it. But for in terms of lakes with guiding, I guide on probably, I think it's about 12 to 15 different lakes around here. Most of them are in Price County, and then there's like 5 or 6 of them over in Sawyer, kind of on the border between Price and Sawyer, just in the Sawyer part of the county that I guide on. So it's not a ton of lakes. I obviously don't have access to nearly as many lake water bodies as you guys do over there. And that's kind of how I got into the rivers too, because I feel like that's definitely an underutilized resource over by me in terms of all kinds of fishing, not just for muskies.
Geographically, for those, we got listeners kind of from all over the place. When you talk about those counties, like what are some of the, I guess, bigger cities, just so people get an idea on where you're kind of at?
So in Price County, there's Phillips, which is right in the pretty much dead center. That's where I grew up. I currently live in Prentice, which is about 15 miles south. And then Park Falls is just in the northern part of the county, and that's where the St. Croix factory is and everything like that. So
Cool. Nice. There you go.
Sweet. One thing I was gonna ask you about over there, I mean, I've looked at the maps and stuff over there. You definitely lack the lakes, but you have more rivers, I think, than over here, and that's pretty sweet. That's something that we have always kind of wanted to do, and anytime we can get in on doing some sort of float trip, it seems like a nice little getaway from the lake. It's a lot more
definitely.
fishing, a little bit more like intimately, you're picking your spots and
Mhm.
picking all of that. When you first did river fishing, you said shore fishing. Do you remember the first time you were able to do a float trip out there?
Um, the very first float trip I ever did, like just in terms of musky fishing, was years and years ago. Every summer, me, my mom and dad and other family members, we'd do like 2 or 3 float trips a year in our big green canoe. And this was kind of before I really got into the musky fishing. So I'd be throwing for smallmouth and whatnot. And it's amazing how many muskies of all sizes you catch on bass gear in the rivers. And that just makes you wonder, okay, if you actually go out here and specifically target these things, you're probably going to do amazing for them. And sure as heck, that I've proven that time and time again since I got my hooligan raft from Stealthcraft Boats. And it seems like every time we go out on the river, you either see fish, lose fish, anything like that. And I've only had a few float trips. I can probably count on one hand how many float trips I've had in the last couple of years where we haven't really seen anything, but that's about it really for that, I guess.
Do you think that like that, just the sheer action that you're seeing on these float trips is due to just little to none pressure on the muskie?
Definitely. There's very few times where I'll see other anglers out there fishing. There's only been like 2 floats in the last couple of years where we've actually seen other people muskie fishing. Otherwise, it's mostly just pleasure paddlers, people who will rent canoes from. There's a couple bars along some of the rivers that have canoe rentals and whatnot, and sometimes you'll see 15, 20 canoes go by you, but they're all just paddling just for the heck of it, just to get out in the scenery. So.
Is it I mean, you don't have to give away the river name or location or anything, but I'm totally unfamiliar with that area. Are these like free flowing rivers? Are they dammed up? Are they stocked in between the dams or
There's one of them that has a couple dams on it, but then obviously between the dams it's like a flowage almost, but as soon as you get below that last dam, it's basically free flowing all the way for 30-40 miles. And then the other one doesn't have any dams on it, and there's one of them that's in between a couple lakes that's only 10 miles long maybe, that I do a lot of smallmouth fishing on, and some musky you'll catch them. And then there's obviously another one over a little bit more towards the western part of the northern area in the state that's got some dams on it, but then like below the last one it's just free flowing for 30-40 miles or so.
that's awesome.
So I got a question about just kind of river fishing in general. Trying to think about how to ask this without kind of talking for too long here. But like, in for us, like we're typical, we fish lakes. That's kind of our bread and butter, like Gus was saying. With the river deal, do you see like specific times throughout the summer and into the fall, like your tactics have to change as much as they kind of do on lakes? Like, is there a certain time of year that's necessarily maybe better than other times throughout the summer? What kind of seasonal progressions do you see throughout the summer and baits and all that good stuff?
Pretty much in terms of early season, like Northern Zone opener this year and other years previously, usually the water's pretty high because we get winter melt off, ice melt off, and a lot of rain sometimes in the spring. Like this year in particular, I couldn't even fish some of the stretches that I normally would because the water was 3 feet higher than normal, versus last year where we almost had a drought going on, at least over by me this way, and the rivers were super low and almost bone dry all season long. But in the general consensus, I would say probably in the springtime, like on lakes, you're going to be using your smaller presentations, fishing tight up to shore, tight up to cover, shallow structure, that kind of stuff. And then as the summer progresses, when the water levels drop, or sometimes they stay high depending on weather, it's a lot more water level dependent than on lakes. But as the water levels drop and they actually warm up when the summer's taking a foothold, I'll tend to throw a little bit bigger stuff, still sticking with straight retrieve lures, mostly like bucktails, swim baits, top waters. Every once in a while on like a post cold frontal day or something like that, I'll throw jerk baits, glide baits, but mostly it's particularly straight retrieve just because you're moving a lot faster. So you have to be able to cover water better. And then as the fall approaches, still in September, we're still throwing pretty much all straight retrieve stuff. And as the water gets a lot colder, like this time of year after the first cool down, people are running suckers on the lakes and whatnot. And then once October hits, then I pretty much get rid of the straight retrieve stuff. Maybe every once in a while on a warmer day, or if the fish are moving really hot and they're active, I'll have someone throwing that. But then you get into like your pull paws, your dive and rise, your glide baits, like specifically that kind of stuff. And I'll have a sucker out the back of the rig too, just a couple feet under the surface, dragging behind. But yeah, that's pretty much the general consensus for the rivers. It's very similar to lakes, but just a lot different water body that you're fishing too. So
So with I mean you're kind of in like a secluded area over there in Price County. I've drove through it a couple times going through like Hayward or going back to Minneapolis.
Yep.
Just seems like there's not a ton around. Are you having to travel kind of eastward to with some of these clients? Are you over towards
Not
Manitowish
really,
or
because like I was saying earlier, there's a good 12 lakes just in the county here that I can fish on that have a really good muskies in them. Anything there's a couple action lakes too, but excuse me, anything from your small lakes that are not even 100 acres, some of them have muskies in them, and then probably I think the biggest lake that I guide on, it's trying to think off the top of my head, little over 500 acres, maybe 600. So I'm not fishing anything super
yeah.
big. Like there's no Cisco based waters or anything like that. And we still have our good variety of our shallow stained and your deeper clear water lakes. So there's some good variability with that. And obviously you got to know when the fish are biting where when in terms of guiding. But so that's about it. Really, there's not a ton of variety in terms of lakes, but enough to get the job done, I guess.
Right.
I mean, so how do you make that call? Like, say, I guess either for maybe it'll be a little more client dependent if you're going on a trip, but like, say you're up with some buddies, or maybe you just have an off day that you can go out solo. Like, are you exploring on lakes, or are you more apt to just go and put in at the river and do that?
Usually we like to go back and forth pretty much whenever I have some buddies up here and we do a weekend trip. We'll always pick a day to float the river. And if that goes really, really well, then we'll do it another day. But usually we always start out on a certain lake. Let's say if I've been doing really good on this one lake, this last couple times I've been out there, then we'll obviously hit that up. Or if a lot of lakes that I've been hitting, we just haven't been really moving a whole lot. We'll kind of just say, okay, we've done really well here in the past during these conditions. So let's go and try out there and see what happens. But if not, we'll pretty much lean to the rivers just because we know exactly how much success we've had out there and lead towards that when things aren't really working out too much on the lakes, I guess.
Kind of funny because we always have like, oh, if a cold front comes in or if it's too early in the year and the whatever dark stain shallow lakes aren't turning up at all and like we don't see any fish, we'll go to a deep clear lake where you maybe have less of those options, but you always have the river to fall back on, which seems kind of bulletproof in terms of turnover, cold fronts, whatever.
Yep.
I'm curious on the fall now, like with sucker season. I mean, we're full swing now in sucker season, but we're getting there. Will you drop suckers down when you're floating down the river? Or will you primarily keep
Yes.
those?
Yep,
Is that
I'll have
dynamite?
usually just one rod behind me because when you're floating in a raft like that spins so easily. If someone's throwing a bucktail in the front of the boat or the back of it, it'll spin in a circle like this just because of the blades pulling. So you can only really deal with one, otherwise it's too much of a hassle. But yeah, pretty much as soon as late September, October hits, and then all the way up till ice up, I'll have a sucker out the back. So. And it seems to work pretty good. I just started doing that this last year actually, and we never landed one with the sucker, but we had quite a few good eats and takes and whatnot. But I mean, so it shows that it works. It's a little bit different, that's for sure. Dealing with it in current can be a big pain in the butt though when you get to a good spot and you're like, okay, I'm gonna stand up and take.
Oh my
As soon as you
God.
stand up, the boat starts spinning, and then pretty soon the bobbers are going right underneath the raft, and it's like, oh God, here we go.
Oh, and we get frustrated enough on a slightly windy day on lakes, so can't complain anymore, I guess,
Yeah,
if the
exactly.
raft's going in
And whenever
circles.
you get to a shallow spot or go down the rapids, you got to pull the sucker out, put it back in the cooler, and
Yeah.
it's a pain.
So
But
what this just popped in my head. This is completely random. So what if you are on a float trip and the river is just roaring, fall or not, summer, spring, throw out in the back down rod, put out a supermodel to slow the raft down a little bit and maybe get bit.
I've thought about throwing a drift sock in the back at some point to do that. But usually, if the river's blown out, I won't even bother. Like there was a couple trips this spring where I had clients reach out for river floats, and I'm just like, the river's like 3-4 feet above what it should be now. Our 9-hour scheduled trip's going to take 4 hours, and I'm not even at the paddle at all. So it's like, I mean, I'd recommend we either go out to a lake somewhere or reschedule for a new date. So that's pretty much how that works. Because I've been on a few trips where the water's just roaring like crazy, and it's not even worth it because the fish are way more spread out. They're harder to find, and you just can't cover or really hit spots nearly as effectively as when the water's super low.
Well, all this little high water talk has got me having nightmarish flashbacks to the Southern Wisconsin opener that Gus, Bryan, and I tried to tackle this year for the first time and got our asses absolutely handed to us. And while that was going on, I was taking a peek at some of the fish you guys were just cracking, which seemed like, every time I'd open up my phone, there's another one posted. So I've been loving all this river talks. I feel like I'm getting taken to school a little bit because I just my ignorance on rivers is high. But I gotta know, man, how on earth? I mean, so you guys were fishing. It seemed like from shore. I mean, we're kind of shifting
Yes.
gears
Yep.
here to back
Yep.
to Southern Wisconsin opener, and we're sitting in fall, so people are might hit the fast forward button, but you shouldn't, because you guys were cracking fish on the Southern Wisconsin opener, and everyone we talked to was like struggling, like they've never struggled before. So you don't have to give up all the goods, but like, what were you guys doing differently than 99% of the other population that tried to fish Southern Wisconsin opener?
So I'm gonna try not to get into too many details because it's kind of like a little, almost like it's not really a secret spot that me and my buddies have, but not too many people know about it. And we actually just because all my friends, my buddies right now, I went to school with them in Stevens Point together down there. So we pretty much discovered it probably sophomore year. Actually, the first time I was shown the spot my freshman year. This was kind of before the whole musky thing got spiraled out of control. And then junior year and my senior year in the fall, we really started hitting it up hard. And then we just decided, okay, why don't we try this spot in the spring? And sure as heck, before graduation, that spring Southern Zone opener, we just had a dynamite year out there, and that was a couple years ago already. But all I'll say is it's not like a full-on dam. It's kind of that. It's a man-made structure that has current flowing over it, obviously, that fish can't get above. That's all I'll say. And obviously when the water is really high in the springtime, those fish are going to move up current and they can't go any further, so they're going to congregate there. So, and that's kind of how we were having such good luck.
Were you fishing was it like a deep eddy? Is that what you're looking for in that
Yeah,
part of the
pretty
year?
much in terms of rivers, your slack water is going to be your best friend. That's where these fish are going to hide in their ambush spots, waiting for something to come by them to eat it. And yeah, pretty much on the edge of fast current, if you can find a big slack spot or a big eddy, yeah, that's going to be a dynamite area to catch a big muskie in. So
Yeah, we didn't have a whole lot of that. A lot of the river was so blown out. Our boat was going like 3 miles an hour, even when we were trying to fish shorelines.
Yeah.
And we tried these back little bay areas behind islands where there was water moving through, but it was significantly less. And we thought we're like, oh my God, they should all be here. And we were completely wrong because we said we have no idea what we're doing. Our only potential opportunity might have been to like a few of the dams we went to toss at. And even those, we all were looking at each other like this kind of stinks. Like
yeah,
this is not what we're kind of looking for, because you get just out of the side back into the main river and you just start zooming down there. So do you think with that really high water that's another reason that you guys thrived on shore, is that a lot of fish did have to seek shelter a little bit, and you could
definitely
find spots like that?
Yep. And pretty much even if the water's going however many CFS per second and it's crazy flooded, no matter what dam you go below, there's always going to be fish congregated there in the springtime. So like I said, where we were, it was an area where fish were congregated below it, and I think we just piss hammered that spot pretty much all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and well, not Friday, but Saturday, Sunday, and then we took off Monday, and we just went back to the same spot, and we were catching fish and seeing fish the entire time. But yeah, high water can definitely make fish go to different areas where they normally wouldn't be. Like, let's say if there's a couple rocks in the middle of the river that have big eddies on them when the water's at a normal level, fish might be behind those spots. But if it gets too flooded and those rocks are 3 feet underwater and it's just roaring through there, a fish isn't going to want to sit in that. It's going to be exerting way more energy than it needs to. So it's going to seek out shelter, or not really shelter, but calmer water where it's not going to have to exert itself too much. So that's why in super high water conditions like that, river fish at least are going to move way closer to shore where there's a lot more cover coming in the water, big rocks, fallen trees, anything to make a current break where they can sit and rest and obviously wait in ambush to eat something. So,
and maybe one more question for you on this before we get maybe into some fall talk. But if we do, for some weird reason, decide to go fish a Southern opener again,
Yeah,
What
I mean, we
kind
will
of
not be doing this.
hypothetically,
again.
if we do, what kind of baits were you guys having success on? 'Cause I think we dumped out the whole box at one point through everything, but
I'm trying to remember exactly what we caught some on. My one buddy lost one. He was walleye fishing and he lost one on a small, I think it was like husky jerk or something like that, just like a 5-6 incher. But otherwise, in terms of musky lures, we got one on a shallow invader, fire tiger one, um, one on a suic, and the rest were actually on these custom swim baits that a guy who makes them over in Europe sent me last off season to use. They use them for giant pike over there, I guess, and we caught, I think we caught 7 fish that weekend, and 4 of them were on those swim baits.
jeez.
And
What's
I think they're about 9 inches longer, so it's kind of like a swimming dog, I guess.
is there much? Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there much of a difference to the swimming dog with those?
The ones that the guy sent me, they're a lot more. It's an external harness, like it's not built in, molded around the rubber, so you actually have to like build the rig and put it into the rubber. So when a fish grabs it, the lure will be off to the side and the rig will be in the fish's mouth, just to save the rubber from getting shredded by their teeth and whatnot. But in terms of action, the tail is a lot more. It's a lot more subtle. Like, when you reel in a swimming dog or a Poseidon, the whole lure wobbles, and then the tail does too. The lure pretty much just stays in one straight line, and the only thing that's moving is the tail. So it's really interesting how they look in the water. But I guess those fish in that particular spot seem to really like them. So I mean, we just kept trucking them out there.
Yeah, so last question. When you guys are fishing shore, do you, and this kind of goes back to too, like when you got into it, like when you're bank fishing or shore fishing, are you moving up and down the shore, or like are you kind of just sticking to one area? Or are you like trudging through the woods exploring, like, oh man, if I can get to maybe that other side or
Yep.
like a different
Yeah.
area, I can.
It really depends on where I am. Like below dams, you're kind of secluded to where you can get to. A lot of areas are fenced off and whatnot. And a couple of the dams that I fish, you pretty much got like a 10-yard circle to where you can stand and actually cast out there. One of them you can walk down quite a long ways, but the only action I've ever had is standing in one particular spot and casting up to the gates. So it's very spot dependent, and there's a few stretches of river that you can get down to and cast from shore. This is before I started floating it and whatnot. And you can cast below this one big rapids. That's a pretty deep hole below it. And then there's actually a trail that goes down about a mile or so to another hole. So that spot in particular, I'll start at the first one. If nothing happens, I'll walk all the way down, or I should say fish my way all the way down to this next hole. And then I'll just fish the whole thing back up pretty much. So, and I'm sure there's plenty of other spots that are just like that, but there's only a few that I particularly really like to hit, at least when I am shore fishing. So
I mean, that makes sense. And then, just another kind of general river question on some bait stuff. Is the water, clarity that you're fishing on a lot of these rivers a little bit dingier? Like, do you lean towards like gaudier stuff, or are you typically more natural kind of colors, or like what's your, is it kind of just a hodgepodge of
in
whatever?
terms of water clarity, we don't have any rivers, by me at least, that are like your gin clear, like some lakes and whatnot are.
Yeah.
Most of it's like your root beer color. Like you can see the bottom in 3-4 feet of water, but it's brown. You take a glass cup and scoop it up, it's going to look like you got root beer or clear coffee in it, basically.
Yeah.
There's one stretch that I fish that's a lot dirtier. That's because the dam's right there, and then it's a flowage above it, so it's just different water composition coming through there. That's a lot cloudier, but most of them that I fish are pretty much that general root beer clear color. And obviously, when it rains, like if there's a big torrential downpour and the water raises, it's going to get dirtier because there's so much runoff coming in from the shore and stuff like that. But and then you were asking me about lures too, what I use and stuff.
Just like more so color wise, I was curious
Okay.
because, like I said, for us, it's like we kind of have our go-to colors and, our brown stuff, our green stuff, our
Yep.
clear stuff.
Yep.
I'm always curious with rivers. Like I've seen people throw some really gaudy colors. I've also heard people talk
Yeah.
about just like wanting to be more natural. Just curious as to what you lean towards.
For me, at least in my boat, I pretty much throw nothing but natural colors. Your browns, blacks, dark greens, grays, golds, that kind of stuff. Very rarely, if ever, I'll throw like a super bright like chartreuse or bright orange or anything like that. Even if it's getting like in lower light conditions, I'll still keep the natural stuff on. I just think with what the muskies and the rivers are feeding on, you almost want to try to do it's the same thing as lakes. You want to try to replicate that as best you can most of the time. So
Yeah, because in a lake, when they blew them up and stuff, you kind of want those painted blades to just put out a better silhouette. But when it's
Yep.
cleaner, I 100% lean on, if I'm using double blades, at least one of them being, brass, copper, or nickel.
Hmm.
And then early in the season, usually lean on all of them being flashy because in that root beer colored water, if you just like catch some smallmouth and see them swimming around down there, they flash
Hmm.
that
Yep.
gold, brown, copper color down there. And you can't help but just throw brown and copper all day long
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
you know that they're mowing down on those
Yep.
smallies.
I got a couple bucktails that are like copper and gold tingy, and those colors just look so good when you're casting. It's like I don't even want to throw anything else at all.
Yeah. What's so in the rivers, what's your let's talk a little bit about topwaters here. What's do you like to throw them in the middle of the day, bright and sunny? Is that fine in the rivers or is that not
I have
something you
I have
dabble?
never caught a topwater fish on a bluebird day in the middle of the day before.
Really?
Nope, I have never
Have you
caught one.
thrown top water on a bluebird day
I
in the
have
middle of
every
the day?
once in a while. If I know the fish are up shallow, I'll throw them. But most of the time, my absolute best topwater action is your classic, your gloomy days where it's misty out, really, really low, heavy clouds. And obviously you got your sunrise and your sunset, low, any kind of low light period like that. But in terms of rivers, we most of our topwater luck has come from like early morning. Usually most of my floats will start right around sunrise, and I'll usually always have someone start out with a topwater. And we've done really well at that time of the day, but it's pretty much in the middle of the day, I'll always have people throwing subsurface stuff like your swim baits, your bucktails and whatnot. And every once in a while, if I know fish are busting on topwater, I'll have someone throw one. And we've had a couple follows and stuff and a couple strikes and misses on topwater in the middle of the day. But other than that, mostly it's just low light periods or like I said, rain and clouds, that kind of stuff.
So, shifting gears here a little bit. And when you're no more top talk. When you're out there fishing on the river, have you ever had an instance where somebody's fallen in on your boat?
No, I have not yet. I've had someone come close though. One guy up in the front, I don't know what he did, but he lost his footing. And the bad thing is the only design I don't like on my raft is there's rod holders just to my left side, but the butts of the rod kind of stick up towards the front, and he fell and his ass landed right on one of the rods and broke a spinning rod. And I was like, oh no, that's not good. But no, nobody's gone overboard yet, knock on wood. So
That's good. Yeah, I mean, like I said, experience level is very low on rivers. Gus and I did a kayaking trip. I think this was either last year, 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago, we got some fishing kayaks and went and floated the Wisconsin River.
mhm.
And we were just gonna go try to catch some smallmouth. So we brought all our gear, we brought some beers, yada yada. And like I got in that thing and I'm like, oh boy, like this thing's a little tippy. And I was like, I don't know, I'm a bigger guy. And I'm just like, Jesus, like I'm not feeling too sturdy in this thing. And I remember like I was like my girlfriend or someone was like, you should, bag your cell phone and do all this stuff. I'm like, nah, nah, nah. Like shit you
I've heard
not. I
that
mean, it
story
was in the
plenty of
first
times.
like 3 minutes, I just dump over the side. Rod, lost the rod. Cell phone goes to the bottom of the lake. All the beer's flowing down the river. We're trying to get it up and clean everything up. And it was just a complete shit show. I'm like, man, I don't
Oh,
know if I'm cut out for this.
I've been bear witness to quite a few people flipping before, and it's just like you want to laugh right away, but then you're like, okay, let's go help them and get all their stuff and everything like that. But
I've never felt and looked like more of a damn tourist in my life. And Gus is over there just like still catching smallies. Like, hey, you guys good over there? You want any help? I'm like, yeah, maybe a little bit would be good. We're like looking for the cell phone on the bottom of the river and stuff like that. It was just a mess. So,
yeah,
I'm just kidding. Yeah, but it was it
Throw
was
me under the bus.
no. Gus helped. Gus helped. He's getting mad at my storytelling, but it was just funny as hell. Like yeah, it was but it was so much fun. Like, we like the way you can fish. Like once I actually, gathered myself and kind of found my equilibrium a little bit.
mhm.
Just like the way, where fish kind of come out of. I mean, we were just smallmouth fishing. We didn't see or move any muskies, but like we were just throwing little whopper ploppers, little, like
Some jigs.
yeah, swim jigs, stuff like that. I mean, it's just so cool. Like you could identify like a little area and be like, okay, there's got to be a fish there, and then
Yep.
sure enough, you'd throw it there and boom, you'd catch a fish. It was just
Mhm.
like, this is I could do this for hours. Like this is just
Oh,
it was so
it's a
fun.
blast. If you can get on a pile of smallies on a float, there's not much better. Obviously, muskies are better, but I mean, smallie floats when you're hammering them, it's like it's a one of a kind experience, especially with top water. Top water eats up on a big bass is just ridiculous. But it's kind of cool because a lot of muskies will hang in the exact same kind of spots bass will. Sometimes you'll cast a muskie bait and the lure. Okay, that might look a little bit shallow, but maybe there'll be a bass there, or if there is a bass there, and you cast your musky lure there, and boom, you catch a muskie in a spot where it's a foot deep. I mean, really
That's
on a river,
wild.
all they need is just enough water to cover their backs. You could catch a muskie
Yeah.
in a foot less of water, and a giant one too. I've seen it happen.
Oh, that's crazy. Have you? So yeah, I know that sometimes, super shallow water muskies, you think they don't feel, or they feel a little vulnerable, but kind
Mhm.
of the big ones don't need to because they're not going to get picked up by anything because they just know
Yeah.
they're big.
Yep.
But in the river, when you've seen them or gotten them shallow, have you ever been able to like pick, see one, I should say, like sight fish one?
Yep. There have been some times where we're just paddling along, and as you're looking down on the water, you can see the bottom, and oh, there's a muskie right there, and you'll float right over the top of it, and then you'll say, "Here, take your bait and cast back up there," and you just might catch that fish. We've had them follow in on stuff like that, and it's like, what the heck's that fish doing in a foot and a half of water? And but sometimes they can just be anywhere out there. It's crazy.
I flipping around another gear here. I saw on your Instagram you were making a bunch of musky flies.
Hmm.
Do you still fly fish a lot, or do you do fly
I
guide
do.
trips?
I'm definitely more on the gear side of things, but I dabble with the muskie flyer. And I've only caught like 5 fish fly fishing for muskies, but I've just really enjoyed always tying flies like that. And I mean, you're pretty much only limited to your imagination when you tie a big 14, 15-inch streamer. It's really cool. But yeah, I've had a couple fly trips already this year where the guys did decently well and moved a couple fish. But
Is it just too frustrating to go out there every day and leave the conventional stuff at home?
yeah, definitely. I definitely feel a teeny bit handicapped if I only have a fly rod in my
Yeah.
hand. Just you can't cast as far. You can't cover as much water. You got to work. You got to go a lot slower and everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. Fly fishing is really cool. It's awesome, but I'll always probably lean more towards just my classic bait caster. So
Yeah. It definitely feels like the most pure form of musky fishing, like fly fishing down a Wisconsin river system,
mhm.
with a fly rod and a jumbo fly and catching it that way would just I'd like to try. I just yeah, like Brian said, it'd be hard to do it um all the time, but I feel like it's
Mhm.
one of those things like, you hear guys that are really into it, and it's like I totally could get it where it's like once you do it and you get good at it, like it would be hard to almost go back and do it a different way because it's like it's
Oh,
just a whole
definitely.
other sport at that point. I mean, you're
Oh, for sure.
you're
Yeah.
just kind of doing something entirely different. But
Mhm.
I did kind of want to ask, I mean, you hear a lot of these stories of giant fish being caught out of some of these small rivers in Wisconsin. Like these fish
Mhm.
just grow, every once in a while, you just see one that's like freakishly big come out of a small river in
Yep.
Wisconsin, whether you see it on social media or whatever, a buddy shows you a picture. Um, you know, eh, but you also see a lot of smaller fish as well. So I mean, like I guess size average wise, like are you typically seeing fish on the smaller side in the rivers, or is it similar to the lakes where you have your days where you see your mid 30s and some days you see those like upper echelon, mid 40-inch fish? Have you seen any freaky big ones in the river that you're just like, oh my God, like I gotta continue to go back and try to get that one? I mean,
It's definitely
yeah.
a variability thing too. Like I'm sure you guys are the same situation here. You're gonna have your lakes that generally have bigger fish in them, or you're like your Class A trophy water, that kind of stuff, and you're gonna have your action lakes where you can go out there and you can catch 5, 6 fish in a day or even more, but they're only going to be like your low to mid 30s range. Same thing kind of applies to the rivers. There's one river over here where it holds some giants in it. The biggest one I've heard of this year coming out of it was a 42, which isn't a giant by any means, but for a very small river, that's a big fish. Any fish over 40 inches in the river is a big fish to me. But on that one, I think we floated that last fall and we caught 7 fish and lost 7 other ones, but they were all right around the 30-inch mark, just little hammer handles, but still an awesome time. And then there's a couple other sections of river that I fish where you might catch your inland Wisconsin 50-inch fish. Earlier this spring, I did a float with a customer I've had out, that 11-year-old kid that I put on a giant last October on the river. We did a different section of river this year, and he had it's the biggest inland Wisconsin fish I've ever seen in my entire life so far. If it wasn't 50 inches, it was 49 and 3/4 for sure at the most. I mean, it came in, followed in his bucktail around like 4 or 5 times, and then just dipped back down in the deep. And he kept fan casting around with it. And then I'm like, here, put on a small. He put on a small Medusa then, and I was just like, here, cast right back to where you moved that thing from, and just jig it right off the bottom. And sure as heck, oh, I'm snagged. Wait, no, it's moving. And then I'm like, set the hook. And then he sets the hook, and the lure comes flying back at us. And it was a brand new Medusa. It was a brand new Medusa, and there was like 3 giant gash marks in it. Obviously, teeth. We're like, oh no. But yeah, that was a giant fish. The biggest inland Wisconsin fish I've seen so far. Bigger than any giants I've seen on lakes either. But then I think the biggest fish we got last season on the river, my buddy Colin, he's in a bunch of my posts and whatnot. He got a 49 1/4 in about 4 feet of water to eat right by the boat. And then we had a couple more in the 44-inch range, a 45. I got a 46.5. So it's very stretch dependent. Some stretches are going to have just generally bigger fish than other ones. But yeah, there's definitely some absolute behemoths in these rivers around here, and there not too many people fish for them. So I think you probably have a better chance to catch a 50 on some of these rivers than you do on lakes in general. That's just my opinion though.
Yeah. I mean, some of the more pressured waters around here, like we kind of joke about, if you move or see a big fish on some of the pressured waters around here, there's a really good chance that one of your buddies or somebody or somebody else in town or whatever had also seen that fish. And they're probably going to be targeting it too, to some extent. So yeah, I definitely hear you there. And it seems like you have a really good crew of guys that you fish with. I mean, are these all college buddies, or do they live up by you and you get out with them a bunch, or they got to come up and?
2 of them actually work at St. Croix right now in the customer service part, so I get to fish with them quite a bit. So, and then the other one, he lives in Green Bay right now, so he has access to those giant fish out there. He doesn't have a boat, but he hops in his buddy's boat quite a bit, and they go out there a lot. But yeah, they're all kind of hooked on musky fishing. So I mean, it's awesome to have some buddies like that. That's for sure, and not too far away for some of them.
Yeah, I have seen you post some big old fish from Green Bay. How many times have you been down there?
This past trip in August was only our second time there.
How'd that go?
Oh man, it was ridiculous. I was the only one to catch fish on this go around, but that 48 3/4 by 25.5 was just an absolute. My God, that was the heaviest fish I've ever held in my life.
That's ridiculous.
My arms were just shaking as I'm holding it up, and that was actually about 3:30 in the morning when I caught that thing. So we were so freaking sleep deprived. We didn't get off the water till probably 11:30 the night before. So all right, we're gonna go take a nap for 2 hours, then get back on the water. It's just
that's nuts.
Yeah.
Is there a good moon phase at all, or was it just because I've talked to some of those? It was.
That's why we went out at that time, because there was a big major right around there, and then it was just getting too hot during the days, so we didn't want to grind it out in the bluebird sky burning down sun either. So it was nice to get out before the light came up.
Yeah, that's definitely smart. I mean, I was able to get down there a little bit for a couple of days with some of my buddies down there, like Kyle and Jamie and such, and we struggled because there was just giant rollers. There was a big cold snap. I mean, we were wearing hoodies and bibs for a great portion of those 2 days I got to fish, and they were able to, beat up on some fish over the weekend. And I know Jamie got one prior to that, but it was just overall tough. And I don't know. Were there rollers going on when you're down there? Or?
We got pretty lucky this year. It wasn't too bad, but last year when we first went there, the very first morning, it was full moon in August when we were there. There was like 3-4 footers, and we were out there in the pitch black and trying to. None of us were used to that, so trying to keep your balance on the boat, it's just like, oh God, I'm gonna end up in freaking water, and I'm doing my figure 8 here. Like probably after about 2 hours, my feet were cramping because I'm just like trying to grip my shoes and stay as sturdy as possible. But yeah, it's definitely an experience being out there on that big water. It's a whole nother world than what we're used to up here.
Yeah, I mean it's cool. Like there's so many different places to chase these fish. Like it's so funny that you think in the state of Wisconsin you could go fish a very remote skinny river system for a muskie. And then you can also go out to Green Bay and sit out in the middle of, that body of water and
Yeah,
also
yeah.
chase muskie. Like
Yep.
and you're not even remotely doing the same. I mean, I guess you're using some of the same lures or whatever, but you're not remotely doing the same thing.
But
And I don't,
the
it just,
caliber of fish is just so much.
oh yeah,
It's two sides to a coin. It's just completely different.
right, right. Have you ever done any muskie fishing outside of the state of Wisconsin at all?
I've been to Minnesota a couple times when I first started. We've been to Leech 2 times, and then we were at Vermilion. And I haven't caught a Minnesota muskie yet. Moved a couple of fish out there, but I just don't think I've spent enough time in that area over there. I'd like to get back there eventually because I mean Vermilion's a beautiful lake. I mean I know you guys have fished it for the PMTT before and whatnot, but yeah, it's awesome. I definitely want to get back out there at some point.
Favorites. I would fish that body of water day in and day out if I could. I mean, it's it had a little bit of northern Wisconsin to it, but it felt like it had a little bit of Canada, then it had a little bit of that Minnesota to it, and it's just like it's got a lot. It was a lot of fun to fish, and yeah, that was. I'd like to get back there too as soon as I can. I mean, I don't think I'll ever get that visual of seeing those the way those fish glow is. I don't think there's another body of water that really.
No.
I mean, I guess I've not fished all of them, but it's a special place that I think the way the watercolor is and how ghostly white those fish are. I mean, it sounds like you moved some when you went up there.
Yep,
Did you
yep.
see any giants up in Vermilion where you're just like, whoa, what the hell is that thing?
On Leech, actually, the first time we were there, we were fishing some sand flats kind of with bulrushes adjacent to the shore, and my mom had probably, I'd say, a 54 to 55 behind the bucktail.
Jesus.
She didn't even see it at first, and I just looked down. I'm like, oh my God, there's a log behind your lure chasing in.
Yeah.
And she did a good figure eight. Nope, just kept going right past underneath the boat. I'm just like, oh, so that was pretty cool for our very first encounter with a Minnesota fish and being a absolute giant.
That's
but
awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's different. Like people that listen to this from Minnesota, it's just kind of like it's normal for them to see that stuff. And I don't think they realize we're not used to seeing 50-inch class fish chase
No.
bucktails.
Ever.
It's like I even joked, I think after the PMTT event, like I lost an absolute, behemoth on a spinnerbait. And I'm like, I'm just not expecting a 50, 2+ inch fish or whatever it was to hit a spinnerbait in 2 feet of water. Like that's just not something my brain has ever comprehended really. So
No.
it's like, you just see that and it's just a whole different world. And it is really cool. Yeah. If you can go back to Vermilion, highly, I mean, obviously, but yeah, it's fun. Like I've never been to Leech. I've always wanted to fish it. That type of stuff to me seems a little different than what I would typically like, obviously would love to catch a giant Leech Lake fish, but I think just the style of that fishing, the visual, aspect of it's just a little different than what we're used to over here in Wisconsin,
Oh, definitely.
to fish a 100,000+ acre lake. I mean, it's just a whole different animal.
It's very intimidating when you're out there on big water too. Kind of the same thing with Green Bay. You're just looking around and you're like, okay, I can barely see the shoreline over there. I can barely see it over there. That's like an ocean out that direction. It's just like you're just kind of blindly casting and hoping for the best and whatnot. But
right. It's a whole different style. Like, I mean, and even to contrast it even more to like your river stuff. I mean, where you're literally picking out, individual rocks or logs compared to going to like a Green Bay or a Leech Lake where, like you said, you're just, I mean, maybe you're not just fan casting, but when I fished Green Bay, it kind of felt like that where you're like, okay, anytime today, like a 55-inch muskie could hit this bucktail I'm throwing, but like I don't think I'm doing anything particularly special to make that happen.
Pretty much.
No.
That's the exact same feeling I have when I'm out there. It's like after a while you're almost kind of bored because at least the style of fishing I like to do, I like casting like at structure here and there.
Amen.
Or if you can see a defined weed line on a lake, you're fishing the edge of it. But when you're out there, it's just I don't know. I'm just casting out here and hopefully something comes in behind it or something eats it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're just kind of hoping, like, like the guy running the boat's doing a good job, keeping you in a good spot. And if you're just out there casting, like, you're just kind of like, you can just close your eyes and reel in. And
like trolling.
We're probably making it sound a little more simpler than it is, but it is just visually a whole different, deal. When you get so used to fishing those like tighter areas, it just is like that's where you're comfortable. Like okay, I can kind of pick through this, and
You know what
stuff
I'm
like
I'm
that.
I'm kind of wondering, like, because those big weed beds on Green Bay, they set up, in fairly straight lines and they're hundreds of yards long.
Mhm.
And it's, if I remember right, I don't know, 10 to 5 feet of water ish, usually like 8 feet of
Yeah,
water.
yeah, give or take. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if anybody does it. I don't think they do because a lot of times those weed beds are just like chock full of boats. But if you could troll blades and spinner baits over the top of that and just go up and down it,
A
would you
lot of
not
people
just
do
clean
troll
up?
actually. I guess it's kind of like a forbidden thing to do out there to like troll in between boats and whatnot, but still
Yeah, I'd
people do
imagine.
it. It's frowned upon, but there's plenty of boats
Yeah, they
doing
got rules down there.
it. Yeah, yeah,
It's like some
Unwritten rules.
unwritten rules.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Brian,
get
you'd be an absolute menace if you got a boat and fished Green Bay.
yeah, you get too close to someone's
You'd be
boat, you can
booted.
stick the bucktail in the back of your head. Or
Yeah,
something
50
like
feet
that.
away from him.
But yeah, a lot of guys will troll down there for them too, just to cover more water. Obviously.
Yeah.
Because if you're just drifting
Oh,
and there's not much wind and you got a trolling motor, you're not gonna be able to cover that much versus someone who's using their big motor trolling. So
I want to quick get back on the fly thing. I just had a brilliant idea come across my mind. Totally foolproof. It's probably
Can't
gonna
wait
work
for
this
this.
fall. But I don't know if you've ever tried this. I think we've talked about it before. We haven't done it, but like last fall we had a billion fish come up and look at our sucker and just sit there on side imaging or live scope and never eat the sucker. I'm thinking you put on a streamer, you have that thing locked and loaded, and if you have a fish there and at it for more than a minute, roll that streamer right across its face. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but I feel like a quiet, subtle presentation like that,
it
maybe.
probably would work because there's the only musky lure, like legit bait caster musky lure I could think of that compares to a fly is either like a handmade castable fly or a beaver. But even
Yeah.
those, they don't compare to just the bucktail tied to a hook with tinsel and feathers. It's so subtle and it's just
So
such a
different from
light,
what they
yeah,
see.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a light
Natural.
presentation. Because like even not to get off the musky topic, but like when we go up to Canada every summer for the giant pike up there, I've fly fished for them up there tons. And there was one year where tons of these big pike are following in my parents' lures and they'll swim off or something like that just because they don't want to eat it. And then I'll throw a fly in the direction where the fish swam and boom, I'll get throttled by them. So it's just sometimes they just want that super duper extra subtle presentation. But like you were saying with a sucker or a muskie looking at a sucker and not wanting to eat it, I bet you could get their interest with a fly. Also, just because it's not something that they ever see. Very rarely do you
Yeah.
see people fly fishing that late in the year on lakes, at least. On the rivers, it's a little bit more, but on lakes, I highly doubt it.
I think it'd be good to cast like just one or two, swing it back at the fish. I don't think
Mhm.
it's like aggressive enough of a presentation to scare them off. So like if they
No.
don't eat, they don't eat, and they might just still be staring at the sucker. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm pretty sure there's like
I might
a
have to try that.
yeah. Pretty sure there's like a Keys episode that they do a river float like
Mhm.
late in the fall.
Yep.
And Ben
Olsen.
Ben Olsen is he's throwing a fly and Keys and somebody else is fishing conventional, Dave probably, and like Ben like kicks their ass. Like they are not
Yep.
kicks their ass, but he catches way more. Like he gets most of the action on the fly.
Mhm.
It's just yeah, like you're saying, I think there's a lot of reasons why that probably is, especially
Yep.
that time of year, just how you can present it and all that stuff. It's
Mhm.
that is intriguing. Although it is funny to hear Brian to think that like Muskie, passes up a fresh actual live meal, which is a sucker and part of its diet to be like, oh yeah, let me go eat that ball of feathers.
They are dumb.
That would be a very pure form of fly fishing there. Raise them up on live bait and put them on the fly.
I mean, that hook set would be nuts. I'm
And only
craving
confirm
that.
it with live scope. Man, that is so pure. You're right.
Yeah,
So
we get so much flack from like really really hardcore fly fishing guys. It'd be ridiculous.
I mean, it's not like nobody's casted back at a fish looking at a
Yeah,
sucker before.
exactly.
It's legal.
Mhm.
not hating, man. Not hating. Just
We're
just
not
interesting, you just surround the boat with live meat, bring them in, and then get them to go on the fly.
we're not sharpshooting about a
Well,
40 feet. We're all good.
God damn. Oh, all right. Well, let's maybe kind of start to wrap it up here. What do you got going on the rest of the season here? Are you running trips this fall?
Yep.
Yeah, Yeah, you got
Yeah,
Open date?
open dates,
I think I
availability.
only have a couple days left in October, and obviously working 4 days a week full time, it limits me to Friday through Sunday for guide trips. But like I said, I think I only got one weekend left in October, and then November's pretty open right now. I mean, generally, most people in general probably don't want to go out that time of year most of the time, depending on where you are. But a lot of people are in the deer stand around here by me at least. So I'm pretty free that time of year, but I obviously plan on spending as much time on the water as I can when weather dependent at least. But that's my general consensus of how the fall's going to go so far, I think.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to have you back on, maybe talk a little bit more about that Canadian pike fishing.
Oh,
That
sure,
that
definitely.
sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's a whole different ball game up there. I could talk for hours about that.
We could do like a little spring special, maybe in March,
Mhm.
and you can give everyone the tips they need for the Southern opener.
I can try my
Find us.
best. I'm no expert, but
Well, you're in much better position than we would be trying to help
Yeah.
people out. It'd pretty much be like just wait until Northern opener, maybe.
yeah, just spend your time chasing smallmouth and walleyes and crappies this time of year.
Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. If you ever make it up our way here, closer to Vilas, don't be shy. Reach out, and it'd be great
Definitely,
to
yeah.
get in the boat together.
Yep. I'd love to get you guys on a river float too at some
That'd
point.
be
I think that'd
sweet.
be pretty darn cool.
Actually, that sounds like a lot of fun. We should do that. I promise
Definitely.
I'll stay in the boat. I will not fall out, and
I got life
it sounds
jackets.
like
We
a
can
good
put one
time.
on you.
That's it. That's all I need to look even dumber. Just a big life preserver on, one that pulls up.
We could just pull you behind with a rope on a little inner tube back there, and you can just do your
Yeah,
own
that'd
thing.
actually be. It wouldn't be terrible.
Ratchet
Kind of
strap you
nice.
down to it.
Float
All
you
right,
down
Luke.
a couple beers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone, real quick, Brian, if anyone's trying to get in touch with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Either reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram username is LBfishing Guide. Facebook, my personal Facebook, which is just Luke Bogdanovic, or my business page, LB Fishing Guide Service. And then I also have an Any Creek account too, where you can see my availability and stuff. And this off season, I do plan on making a pretty cool website to actually advertise all my stuff in that way, my own personal way to do that. So that's something to look forward to in the future. But yeah, right now, probably just social media or my phone number, obviously, that's listed below all of my posts on Instagram and even Facebook too. So yeah, quite a few ways to reach me, that's for sure.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your time tonight.
Awesome.
And we really enjoyed that. We'll definitely get you back on and hope to get out in the boat one of these days. Enjoyed that a lot, and hope you have a good rest of your season. We'll stay in touch and see how you're doing, and
Yeah, you guys
go
too.
bag some big giants there on the river. Go get one
We're-
of those 50s or
we're
48s
gonna
or
try
any of the
to.
big fish.
Yeah, and
Oh,
any big
yeah.
stuff will make me happy.
Oh, for sure.
All right, Luke.
I
Appreciate it.
appreciate you guys having me on. It's an honor.
Absolutely.
All right, we cannot thank Luke enough for coming on here tonight, chatting muskies, chatting river muskies, all sorts of stuff, southern zone, northern zone, little Green Bay, a little bit of this. Really awesome to have him on and learn about what he's doing. If you guys are looking for a musky river float trip, definitely reach out to Luke. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. Nice to it always just kind of reminds us how much we really do want to do that, and we keep talking about it, but we don't have the resources. So, getting in touch with him or getting out in the water with him would be cool to do that. It would be a little dangerous. It would really make us be searching the Facebook marketplaces for a couple of rafts or, skinny water boats, and then the summers would fly by and they just have a bunch of boats and you don't know what to do with your time with because you got so many choices. It would just get kind of difficult potentially, but good
Why you
stuff
hire
for
a guide
sure.
like Luke?
Exactly. That's more what I'm getting at there. But yeah, other than that, we got so we talked a little bit about the PMTT Championship that's coming up here this weekend in the outro. hope everybody, if you're listening to this and you're in the PMTT Championship, hopefully you made it up here safe. However far you're driving from, hope you enjoy what Eagle River has to offer. It's a cool system. I mean, I know I've talked to a lot of people that come from out of the state really, and they're, it's got a lot going for it. It's a 8 lake system, or more depending on what you want to call a lake. There's a couple little small parts of it, and a lot of good bit of diversity. So we're looking forward to that, and we don't want to go into too many details because this is a big one. Can't be giving away no secrets here on the old home waters.
Boo.
Nah, not yet, not yet. We'll give the deets afterwards for sure. But yeah, prior to this, I guess you can give a little recap of the Paul's Pro-Am that I just did with good friend Clayton Speece that we were part of, and had a great time fishing with him. It was a really fun weekend. We were not able to make the top 10, but we did manage a 37-incher. But unfortunately, that was our only bite. We went 1 for 1, and it just kind of sometimes stinks seeing that, especially when the fish were really lighting off on the chain. There's a lot of fish caught day one. The weather was pretty crazy, and in a lot of cases, like we talked with each other about it, I think we're a little late to the party on some of the areas or the lakes that we got to, because we ended up fishing 1, 2, 3, 5 of the lakes on the chain, and just trying to switch it up and find the bite or see which one was kind of lighting off. And I think it just seemed like our timing was a little bit off, and it is definitely not for lack of being on fish. And in that tournament, you are allowed 1 live scope unit. So, and we were using Clayton's boat. We had he rigged up the perspective mode or the landscape mode with live scope, and we had 360 going as well. And my God, I think we're seeing at minimum 2 fish per spot. There might have been 1 spot all weekend where we did not get any fish moving, at least off of it, towards the boat or near the boat. So not for lack of fish, but just getting them to bite. We couldn't figure it exactly out, or get the timing on our lures, because we knew we were throwing good lures. I mean, they were definitely keying in on bucktails and topwater that weekend. It did seem like they started to shift towards a little bit of some jerk baits depending on how the weather went. So there's kind of a whole hodgepodge. I mean, of course, I also want to give congrats to Adam Bricko and Peter Blickers for getting the W out there.
Shout out.
They got 4, and I think every single fish they caught on a different lure. It was like a bucktail, topwater, glide bait, and rubber or something like that, or jerk bait. I can't remember, but it was 1 different lure per fish, and that's they were definitely dialed in their spots, and they're also dialed in their timing on when to use what lure. Because I for sure threw 1 of everything. I might not have thrown a glide, but I sure as hell was throwing topwater bucktail quite a bit. And I definitely, on day 2, when things slowed down, I started to go single blade bucktail and suics a lot, and a couple crankbaits trying for castbacks. And like I said, timing might have been a little off, but really enjoyed my time out there with Clayton, and had a lot of fun.
Still battling the hiccups over here, so I apologize. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of the, I talked to Gus a lot about the tournament, and I think it's a little bit of the difficulty of fishing tournaments on home water. I think it's the extra layer, a little bit of like, man, we should be doing better than we are right now, kind of at all times, unless you're really lighting it up, it feels like. And I think you have kind of that many ideas or spots in your back pocket, I think it can kind of be tough. So that's something tough is like, it's kind of funny to say that, but it's like, when we fish these tournaments on new lakes, we kind of hone in on a handful of areas that we really like. We'll kind of stick to them, where here it's a little bit different. So It's something that I think we talked about all week that we're trying to, really try to avoid getting too caught up in like, hey, we're gonna go fish this spot, and then on the way to that spot being like, well, should we maybe go hit this spot or go hit that spot on the way there? Because it's just one of those deals, you hear other people talk about it that have fished home tournaments, and it can kind of trip you up. So we're gonna do our best to formulate a good game plan, fish really hard. Jesus Christ. They're outrageous. And just kind of stick to it and trust what we're doing. So yeah, I mean it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I think weather should be interesting. I mean, it's gonna be what, Gus? What do we got here? I'll turn over to you because you got the weather app up, but not your typical late
Give me that.
late September.
Give me that. You're done.
I'm dying.
He's just dying over there. No, leading up to the tournament, we're still gonna have nights. Actually, looking at it now, we're gonna have nights in the 40s the whole time. So it's gonna be cold every single morning, but Thursday's high of 76, Friday's high of 77, Saturday high of 79, Sunday high of 75, and then the following Monday, just to see the progression of this, is a high of 72. And the nights are starting at Thursday are 45, 47, 46, 48, 45 to 41. And next week we get 2 nights in the mid 30s. So the fish always know what's going on ahead of time. They're a lot more sensitive to the environment than we are, so they'll be sensing another cold snap. I hope that gets them a little fired up. Of course, being on home waters, I would be very okay if the bite is tough, because it's just something that I'd have to deal with anyways out there on a given basis, because it is the home waters, and there's been plenty of days I've been out there where it's tough for some other people, or honestly, sometimes, some people doing well, and maybe I'm out there struggling a little bit and able to squeak out that one bite because there's a lot of fish in the chain. And what I found, if you, like Max said, formulate a good game plan, you just stick to it and you just hammer it and you don't second guess anything, it's going to grant you a bite, whether, you make it happen or not. Obviously, if you get really dialed in or the bite's hot, you're going to get presented a lot more opportunities, whether you're dialed into a bait or a spot or a certain type of spot, and you can bounce to a few others. That's going to be kind of the game-winning question on what we're going to do, because we do have a lot of memories out there. The amount of spots, I mean, I don't even want to know how many waypoints I have on this chain. It's probably I think out of the 4,500 waypoints I have out right now, I gotta think at least 1,000 to 1,500 of them are out on just the chain only, whether it's rocks, weeds, sand, fish caught, lost, seen, anything like that. So, I mean, I got them out in the middle of the lake. I got them out in 2 feet. They really could be anywhere out there. And it's just whoever by the end of the weekend is able to dial in a pattern is of course going to get it done. And I don't know how much that weather is really going to drastically change. It looks very consistent. The wind it looks very lightweight on Thursday, very light on Friday, and it's going to slightly pick up a lot more of the north, shift to more northeast, and we're going to have a dead east-northeast on Sunday.
Ooh.
So it could be a little gnarly. I've seen east-northeast go one of 2 directions, really okay or really bad. So don't quote me. I mean, it could light off. Who knows? Like I said, it could be really okay, and one group just finds a group of boats, or one boat finds an active area and gets it done. But anybody's guess is well, I shouldn't say that. We know what we're going to be doing out there, but anybody's guess is as good as ours at this point on what's going to get it done from here. We'll be out pre-fishing and trying to figure out what they're going to be dialing in on. I have a decent idea, but definitely just want to reconfirm that a little bit more on the chain. And yeah, we've been fishing a little bit off the chain and some of the off times, so we're not on it the whole time. Don't really want to burn fish or sit in any of the tournament spots. And yeah, fishing in other lakes has actually been pretty damn good as of late when we're actually fishing pretty hard. And whether it's a system we know well or not, there's been some very large fish moving towards this half moon. They for sure were during the full moon recently, and it seems like they've just kind of continued. So hopefully that continues for this tournament weekend. You know, the cold mornings are gonna have a lot of fog on the water, and it's gonna be looking pretty cool, looking around 66, 67 in the mornings right now. Water temp up to like 69, 70 is about where it's at. It's not getting too much hotter because everything we gain in the daytime, we're going to lose at the nighttime. So going to stay consistent, and I hope that sets the chain off in a good way.
Yeah. My hiccups are finally gone. But yeah, I mean, really not too much else to talk about. It's going to be a really fun event. Like you said, Gus, I mean, somebody's definitely going to figure it out, get it done. There will be somebody at the end of the weekend who catches a pile of fish and wins this thing. So, you know, another championship now. This is our second year doing the full trail. It's been another awesome year. I mean, we'll probably kind of talk about that a lot more in you know, next week's episode, but it's just been such a great year. I think tournament fishing has a little bit of a, some people, you know, look at it a little differently. I definitely enjoy it a lot. It's definitely to each their own. But I've found it to be really beneficial, met a lot of great people, and I think during these championship weekends it's fun because you get a smaller group of folks up here. You know, and it's just a good time. So should be, like I said, should be a really fun weekend. It's been a great start to the week. Yeah, I'm just kind of looking forward to getting through it. You know, hopefully the back holds up. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I know, again, shout out to Luke for coming on here tonight. I had a great time chatting with him. I know we didn't really do a full takeaway here on our outro because we were talking about the PMTT, but just cool to see another young angler that's getting into the guiding business and clearly has a immense passion for the sport. So always awesome to chat with people like that. But yeah, Brian, don't want to hold you up here any later tonight than we already got you. I think Gus and I are gonna go do a little bit more scheming for tomorrow on what we want to do. So if well, I guess Gus here, I'll dish it to you quick to give your guide information. Then Brian, why don't you take us away right after?
Yeah, you can reach us as a group, Muskies on Tap, on Instagram, which is just at Muskies on Tap. You can also find myself, Gus Manty, on Facebook, or Suggs Fishing Guide Service, which is SUGS Fishing. Also on Instagram as Suggs Fishing. And you can find all of the fine details there on the website, www.sugsfishing.com. Pretty soon here, right after the PMTT, I'm definitely going to start running suckers. It's been a little warm for me. I know some people have been having some success on them. I just, you know, sometimes don't always like getting into that huge investment of the suckers and having them die in such short notice. You know, if they don't get eaten, especially in September when you're moving your boat still a little bit quicker through spots and switching spots a lot, it adds a lot more stress on the suckers. But anyways, looking forward to that. Definitely gonna be doing tons of that and a lot of casting. You know, we've caught fish as late as I think last year, the latest casting fish, well, here in these lakes was November 30th, and then also we were able to get on some other fish casting because of the weird weather on December 26th or something like that. So that'll still eat artificials all year long. But I just posted on my story some open dates. It'll probably be gone by the time this episode comes out, but if you want to get in touch with me for those dates, use that information and reach out. I'll probably send another post here again on whatever's left. It's not too many dates, you know, there's a couple more flexibility there in late October, but from early to mid, it's very hit or miss, and pretty much every single weekend is booked completely until November. So really looking forward to taking everybody out and hopefully hammering on some fish. So with that being said, Brian, I think that
All right,
wraps up this
everybody. Thank you for
podcast.
listening to
Looks
this
all
week's episode
right.
of
There you go.
Muskies on Tap. Shout out to Luke Bogdanovic for coming on this week. Incredible interview with him. Looking forward to meeting him in the future. Guys, we got the Green Bay Packers blowing people's minds this year, doing it without their QB1. We got the Vikings coming into town this weekend, about to get that ass whooped. We got Bama and Georgia on Saturday. Make sure to tune into that. An absolute barn burn. We got the President's Cup this weekend for all you golf fans. One last hoorah on the year. I'm going to call for the upset. Team International here, full of ball strikers outside of Taylor Pendrith, Mackenzie Hughes. But a big upset there, so keep that on your radar, guys. If you're not fishing, good luck to everybody at the PTT this year.
He's not nice.
Shout out Taylor Pendrith.